Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the CPA Advisory Show. My name is Chris Herbishan. I'm here along with my co-host, Jeremy Wells. Jeremy, how you doing?
Doing well, Chris. Thanks. How are you?
Oh, best day ever, definitely. And today, it's even better because we have a very special guest, Kelly Mann of Audit Miner fame. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. Everybody knows Kelly. I don't even know if Kelly needs an introduction at this point, but Kelly and I both graduated Leadership Academy in 2018. Kelly comes out of public accounting and has developed her own SaaS business, which is Audit Miner, which is automating EBP audits. Kelly, how are you today?
I am doing fantastic now that I'm here with you.
Oh man, just laying it on thick. So Kelly, for those of our audience who don't know, and I can't imagine that that's hardly anybody, but who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? Why do you do it? That whole thing.
You give me way too much credit here. I am from Omaha, Nebraska. That's where I live, flyover country. And I was in public accounting in 2007 after I graduated, went right into public. And I was in there for about 12 years. And that's the time that I went through Leadership Academy with you, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And we can kind of talk a little bit more about it. But after Leadership Academy, I decided that I wanted something different for my life. And I started my own CPA practice. And so my background is in auditing only. I do absolutely no taxes. I outsource my taxes to CPAs that know what they're doing. But within that, I really focused on nonprofits and employee benefit plan audits during my, I would say, 12-ish year career, working for a separate CPA firm.
Okay, so let's jump right into it. So you had a firm, and now you've got both a firm and a SaaS company.
SaaS company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So basically what happened.
Yeah.
Doing this kind of story. Okay. So you can see I have this little picture of a cow behind me here. It's because I'm from Nebraska and there are a lot of cows in Nebraska. But it means more than that, because during my career in public accounting, I was always told, try not to be such a bull in a china shop. Because I have opinions and I ask questions and I challenge the status quo. And that doesn't always come well from a female in a male-dominated world. You know, we kind of get this, stay in your lane, don't speak up. But they meant it with like the most sincere wanting to help me navigate politics. When I went into Leadership Academy and where I met Chris, we learned a lot about ourselves. And I realized that I'm okay with being a bull, but I'm not okay living in a china shop. And then literally 2 days after Leadership Academy, I quit my job to start my own CPA practice. And, as a female, I didn't know a lot of other females that had started their own CPA practice, let alone that only knows audit. And in you, Chris, for example, you started your own, but you had this tax background. Like everybody that I knew that started their own firm had a tax background. And so I didn't think that I could do it. But the community that I built at Leadership Academy, you included in there, were like, you can do it in audit. You just need to find your niche. And I was like, well, I can do a 401k audit with my eyes shut. I've been doing that for 12 years. And so what I did is I said, my CPA practice is only going to audit 401k plans. That is it. And I started looking into, I quit the firm I was at, started my own firm, Kelly Mann CPA LLC. I could go on a whole TED talk about why I am so frustrated with the name of my firm. We can save that for later if we have time.
I've got a similar story about the name of my firm. It's totally frustrating.
Yeah, we kind of talked about it. Yeah, It's fascinating. But I was looking at the different technology that I wanted within my practice. And I thought that anything that was mundane, routine, and repetitive had technology that could take over that job. And that kind of is a 401k audit. And so I called all the big players in the industry, and I don't know if I should name them or not, but the Thomson Reuters, Caseware, CCH, Mindbridge, I called them all. And I said, what do you have for software specifically for 401k plans? And nobody had anything. And it was just one of those, okay, great, have a nice day. And we hung up the phone. Well, within a couple of weeks, a representative from almost every company I called had reached back out to me saying, we heard you were interested in EBP technology, employee benefit plan technology. That's an industry we want to get into. We just don't have an expert with the vision. And so I would talk to them about what I thought technology could maybe do in this space, the routine, the mundane, the repetitive tasks that we do. And it's really funny because at the time I thought I was like pretty cool. Wow, these tech companies want to hear my ideas and they're listening to me. And I just, I came out of this firm, I was nobody. And now these big companies, I'm kind of on the radar a little bit. I thought that was really neat. And so we would spend 15 to 20 minutes talking about what I thought technology could do in this space. And then we hung up, and it was one of those, if we want to keep pursuing this, we'd love to have you involved in the conversation. Well, I go on about my day. About 3 weeks later, two of those companies had scheduled Zoom calls with me. And this was pre-pandemic, before Zoom was cool and normalized. And at that point, I was like, okay, hold on. If all they want is my vision, I want to try and own my vision. So I canceled the Zoom calls and I Googled how to start a software company. Legitimately Googled that. Like, that is how much I didn't know. And at that point, I found an accelerated program here in Omaha, Nebraska. It was ran through the Omaha Chamber of Commerce. And so it was a nonprofit. They didn't take any equity. There was no cost to be involved in it. And so I filled out their little give me more information online thing. And that night I got an email from the founder of the Startup Collaborative, which is the accelerator, saying, I think this is really great what you've identified. Can you come and talk to us about it tomorrow? And so the next day I drove to downtown Omaha because I live in the suburbs, right? I sat on a couch in front of the two founders and told them, this is where I'm at. This is kind of what has happened. And I don't know if this is something I can do, but I want to at least explore it. Like, did I just find an underserved technology niche? And they just kind of said, you're a breath of fresh air and exactly the reason why we started this program. And we want you to come along. And so I basically became I subscribed to the Startup Collaborative, and it just kind of walks you through the different things you needed to do to start a technology company. That is how I stumbled upon the need for software.
If you've identified a need, and I can imagine that most firm operators out there have said, oh, I wish that this piece of software does that, or they've had communications with some software provider and they've provided the perspective and they haven't owned their vision. They've given their vision away. So, but for those people who are out there listening and they're like, you know what, I have this vision or I have this thought or whatever, then what? Like maybe they don't have a startup accelerator near them, or like, what's the next step, or what are the high level steps?
Yeah. And so, I mean, you have to understand that I just realized that there was these repetitive tasks in benefit plan audits. I knew that there was no software specifically for it, but that's the level of it. I didn't know what the software was going to do. I just knew that there was a problem that wasn't being solved, that wasn't being serviced. So what I did is I created a Google form, and it said, I had like two problem statements in there. One of them was the cost of performing an employee benefit plan audit does not correlate to the value that our customers are perceiving. The second problem was that too many people are retiring and we don't have the pipeline to replace them. Like, those are my problem statements. I mean, how big is that? But I sent this Google form out I ended up talking to 45 different CPAs around the country. I would post it on LinkedIn. I direct messaged people. I called my contacts that I knew that would just listen to me, and I would interview them on the phone or set up a Zoom call with them. And then they would send me to their contact, like, oh, you could talk to this person too. And they would make an introduction. And by following all these little breadcrumbs, I ended up talking to 45 different CPAs around the US about what their problems were in this industry. And I took all of that data and I said, what is the most common underlying frustration that I think technology could solve? Like the smallest little thing. Because I am not a millionaire and I cannot build this robust technology. Like I literally just started my CPA practice. I have 3 little kids. My youngest was 1 at the time. I'm just a normal CPA from Nebraska. So I didn't have millions of dollars to build a robust software. So I wanted to
when you
find
say the smallest little thing, that's relating to EBP, right? That's not the smallest little
the
thing
smallest
broadly in
piece of
CPA firms.
technology
Okay.
that would solve a problem in the EBP space that I think people would pay for. And that is how I identified the prototype for Audit Miner. And the prototype is actually still what we're selling today. We haven't moved beyond it quite yet, but that was really the discovery. And I spent about 9 months in market discovery talking to CPAs. And then once I kind of got that understanding of this is what I think the problem is, I put out a problem statement survey to the same people. And it was something like, there are so many different record keepers in the 401k space, and they all produce reports that look differently. It is time consuming and a waste of manpower to be able to navigate through them all. And I think 95% of respondents agreed with that problem statement. And that is the tool that I ended up building.
So that's a 9-month discovery process. It basically took 9 months to talk to 45 CPAs, and really, which I don't think anybody is surprised about. But but that's how long it takes to really nail down this is what they're all saying.
Yeah, and I mean, I read the book The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, Reis. I don't know how you say his last name, but I kind of subscribed to that because I didn't have backing. We don't have venture capital really in Omaha, Nebraska. Nobody knew who I was. And so, I mean, it really was, what is the simplest thing that I could afford to build that I think somebody would pay for to get product market fit? And so we incorporated the company. I sat down on that couch with this two Startup Collaborative founders in February of 2019. I incorporated Audit Miner October 14th of 2019. So we are coming up on our, anniversary of 3 years, 3-year anniversary. Yeah, which is kind of cool in a couple of days here. So with that incorporation, I created a 49-page business plan. I thought business plans were a joke. I didn't think anybody really
so
did
all
them.
of our clients. Jeremy, how many? I asked this 2 episodes ago. Jeremy, how many of your clients have business plans?
Zero.
Yeah. I mean, I tell you what, though, that was the best investment of my time for Audit Miner because I got everything out on paper, and it was the future vision, the 5-year projection of what I thought we could make, how we are going to impact Omaha, Nebraska and the community. The roles of myself and my co-founder and what our backgrounds are and how they complement each other. There's just so much that I worked through to build that 49-page business plan, and included in there were wireframes of what the website would look like. And I got feedback on those wireframes from potential customers. Does this look intuitive to you? And it was all time, but it didn't cost any cash. There was no cash flow to create that business plan. And I used that business plan to apply for a grant through the Nebraska Department of Economic Development. And so I received a $35,000 grant to build the prototype, and I and my co-founder each had to put in $18,000 of our own cash to match it. So that is how much money I personally have invested into Audit Miner as of today.
Okay.
Is $18,000. And that might not sound like a lot to a lot of people, but it was 75% of my liquid savings.
Let's take a step back here, because this process of doing so much research, right, and then actually laying out the plan and getting all the feedback on the plan, this to me sounds like what the ideal advice out there for, you've got an idea, you want to see if it's worth doing, so let's see what people think, let's put a plan together, let's make sure all of our ducks in a row. But then I also see the practical side of it, of just saying, okay, that's 9 months that you could have just been building something and been getting sales, or, that 49 pages of business plan could have been 1 page and then you could have just done without the other 48, right? So first of all, what made you actually carry through all that process? What's in your mind as you're going through this process? Did it ever feel like, on one hand, this is just too much, I just need to get started? Or what, did it just feel natural to go through what seems like such a relatively lengthy process? And then second, how did you actually get through all of that and then say, you know what, I'm still going to do it. Because I think on the opposite end of that spectrum, so many people would spend that much time with their wheels just spinning. I've got this idea, it'll be great one day, right? But then they never actually do anything with it, right? So what kept you motivated to keep doing the research, keep doing the planning, keep getting the feedback, but then at the same time, not lose interest and just let the idea just go and, just have the wheel spinning? Because this to me is
Well,
remarkable that you were able to go through such a lengthy process and then also still like execute on the idea.
yeah. Honestly, it was fear. That is why I spent so much time researching, from fear. Because who am I to start a software company? I'm not qualified. I don't know anything about technology. Like, I didn't know what Python meant, which is a coding language. Like, I didn't know. I also took a computer science 101 course from Stanford University online to see what coding looked like. Like, how do you do it? And that made me realize I will happily pay for it. I don't ever want to have to do that myself. It's way more difficult than accounting. But it was truly fear of getting started and putting all my eggs in one basket. And so I had my CPA practice where I was making money. Like, I had clients, that was my income. I was probably working on it part-time, and the other part was audit minor, but I was just fascinated by it. And the other thing that was really exciting was I talked to 45 different CPAs around the country. Those are connections that I made to help my career. And it was a lot of fun getting introduced to these people and learning about their stories and just becoming friends with them. And so while it seems like a lot of work, it was also a lot of fun. And you say that I could have been building and getting something in the market and making sales, but it takes a startup an average of like 6 to 9 months to find product market fit. That means actually finding someone to buy their software. When we released Audit Miner, we had our first sale in 48 hours because of all the work that I did up front to make sure I was building what our customers needed. So I spent so much time finding out what their problems were and not assuming that I already knew, because I'm a CPA. Those are the things that I had problems with. And what I thought I would be building is not what we ended up building.
And when you were talking to those 45, what ended up being 45 CPAs, you weren't just talking to them as colleagues, just kicking around the idea saying, hey, this sounds cool, right? Like, you were actually talking to them as potential customers. They were people that you were
I had a
intending to
script.
sell to, not just people to
Yeah.
kick around the idea with, right?
Yeah. So I actually had I think it was 4 questions on a Word doc. And I would ask them those 4 questions. Like, yeah, you had some like, hey, I'm Kelly. Nice to meet you. Tell me about yourself. But then I would go into my 4 questions, and they were the same 4 questions for every person. So I could have equal data. And one of the questions was, what is your biggest frustration when auditing a benefit plan? And I just let them talk, and I would listen, and I would take notes. And if it was a Zoom, I would record it. But sometimes they were just phone calls, and I had to take notes on paper, and then I put them into there. Sometimes they didn't have time to meet with me, and so it was just that Google form, and it was an open box of what else would you like to tell me? And I got so much good feedback from that open-ended box.
This reminds me of a book that I read and recommend a lot for people who are struggling with putting the idea together. It's called The Mom Test by Rob Fitzgerald. And he has the gist of it is, don't pitch the idea, actually do the research, actually find out. And I love the way you phrase that question. Like, what is your frustration with this process as it exists? It's not, hey, I'm putting this together, would this help, right? Because of course everybody's going to be like, yeah, sure, that would help, right? But it was, no, just tell me. And then, the second part, which is even harder than asking the question, is just sitting back and listening to the responses, right? So I love that you went
Yeah.
through that
Yeah.
process, right? Like, talk about that a little bit more, because I think this is something that, I as a CPA, as an accountant, as an advisor, and all of us, we jump into prescriptive mode, right? Like, we have a prospect or a client come to us and they say, I'm dealing with this, and we jump in and we say, oh well, I need to set up QuickBooks for you, or oh well, we need to do an S election, or oh well, let's just let's put this into place for you and it'll fix it.
Yeah.
And we don't really spend enough time just pulling that information out of them. So talk more about
Yep.
that process and like what you were going through, where your mind was as you were asking those questions and getting that research.
So you definitely hear what you want to hear. Absolutely. Because when I was talking to all these people, I had one thing in my mind of what I was hearing. But the best thing that I did is I literally combined the answers to all of these questions in one document. And I just literally copied and pasted from my notes or from the Google Forms into one big document in Google Docs. And I did a word map where they show the words, the words that are most commonly said are the biggest words in the word map, and the ones that are lesser or smaller. That's what I did. I did the word map. And literally the biggest word was record keeper. And I was like, oh, okay, let me dig in. What were people saying about record keepers? And that was the number one smartest thing that I did in respect to looking at the results. And so while I could have written it all down, you're still interpreting what you are already biased to hearing or seeing. And so that was a very unbiased task or exercise that I did that really informed Audit Miner.
I would love to just be able to walk through that process, because I do a lot of my calls with clients over Zoom and prospects, right? All my consultations and discovery calls and then calls with clients. And, I have recordings of them, right? And I've got transcripts, automatically created transcripts, just dumping all of those files, into some word cloud software and just seeing what pops up. That to me sounds like an incredibly, whether you're creating a new product or whether you're just trying to better help your clients, I think that just what are they actually talking about as opposed to what are you hearing them talk about?
Yep. What are the words that come up?
Tying this back to a previous episode, this is basically what Ed Kless was talking about as far as moving off the solution. And the book that he referenced for that was Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play by Mann, which is a book that I actually just finished reading, but that's exactly what it is. Just moving off the solution. Instead of saying, well, this is what you need, ask more questions, get more information, and then build something around that. You don't need to sell it, 2 seconds in. You need to actually figure out what the root of the problem is, which is a beautiful explanation that you just gave on how you got there.
Yeah. And I do want to pick back up because you talked about the business plan and how most business owners do not have a business plan. And it's like, business 101, make a business plan, but everybody thinks it's a joke. And like I said, it was one of the best investments of my time. To this day, I provide that business plan, which was created back in 2019. So much has changed, but the roots of it are still there. I have provided that to every key employee that I have hired before they decided to join Audit Miner. And so I have them sign an NDA and I say, this is the business plan. Is this something that you can get behind? And everybody that I have chosen has come on board because it's just such a clear way for them to truly understand the vision in a way that I could not communicate because there's so much behind it. And then it gives them trust that this business owner has put so much time and love and effort and research into this. And this is like concrete, real stats that she's showing here. And it's very easy for them to get behind. And so I have used it as a recruiting tool. I've used it in applications for Audit Miner was selected for the AICPA and CPA.com Startup Accelerator program. I used it in that and just all the grant applications that we've applied to. You submit it.
Do you think that sort of a strategy is something that would work for firms broadly? I get it. For a startup, especially, so basically somebody who's trying to change the world, which is what Audit Miner is trying to do, in that corner of the world, at least, right?
Yeah. Right.
But is that a strategy that would work for firm, as we're trying to recruit talent, which is a struggle?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's so hard to communicate your vision and get buy-in. And especially if you're a firm that wants to niche, develop your business plan so that the person that you can bring in can truly understand the opportunity and the vision and how they can fit in there. And it does not have to be 49 pages. 15 of those pages were wireframes. 3 of those pages were customers saying, I would be willing to pay for this and this is a problem, on their letterhead. The actual meat and bones is probably around 15 pages. But I don't know how it wouldn't be beneficial. I have a little mini business plan for my CPA practice, even of how, I accumulated all of the small firms in the US that I could and said, like, these are the people that don't want to be doing benefit plan audits. And that's what my CPA firm does. And I developed like stats and revenue projections from that too.
It's incredible.
And it just gets you back to the core and focus on what you're truly trying to accomplish.
What's so fascinating about this story to me is that we talk about, in the profession broadly, we talk about productized service offerings. We talk about bots taking over literally everything that we do, and bots are going to do all of the work. We talk about the pipeline, and there's no accountants available, there's no CPAs available, anything like that. And this, to me, feels like the intersection of all of those things, and something that firm owners and people who have thought this way can take a lot out of. I don't know if that's a question or a statement.
I mean, it's honestly like anybody can do it this way. You don't have to have a technology background. Like I didn't. I mean, I liked technology. I liked using it. But it's really a methodological way for you to be able to build a software company without any background in it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Oh.
So pivoting a little bit, you just went to the AICPA Executive Roundtable and got a sense of where the profession is going, especially from a software perspective and things like that. So tell us what came out of that, what the key takeaways were, and just tell us all the things, I guess.
Yeah. Like that was it's such an incredible experience. So the AICPA, CPA.com selected 35 software companies in the accounting space to come. And Audit Miner was one of those selected. And then I was just blown away that they considered Audit Miner of that caliber. Because our product has been in the wild for about 18 months now. So we are really, really new. But so we went to New York, went to the headquarters, and they invited one C-suite executive from 35 different companies, one. And I was in that room with a C-suite executive from Thomson Reuters, Wolters Kluwer's, Ignition, like all the big players. And what was really neat is we all had 5 minutes and we had slides and we had a timer. Like if that buzzer hit, everyone laughed at you, right? Because you went over the time and you literally had to stop mid-sentence. We all had 5 minutes with a pitch deck to describe what our company does, like how big we are and where we are, like how much traction we have to kind of like equalize so everybody knows what everybody does. And that was just so fascinating for me to see these other leaders doing that for Thomson Reuters or Wolters Kluwer's, like to hear how many customers they have and what their goal is to get out of the roundtable. And so what I found is that every single company was there for partnerships. I think everybody realizes that you can no longer do everything. There's not one solution that's going to take care of all of the problems. It's just not possible. And so I find that these companies want to do what they do really well and then partner with other software companies that do that piece really well. So for example, like Thomson Reuters has a platform called Advanced Flow for audits. And so how can Audit Miner fit into that platform for our mutual customers? And so there was a lot of talk about that. Also, Barry talked, the president of the AICPA, he kind of, and Eric Ackerson, the CEO of CPA.com were there. They kind of talked about just the industry and the pipeline. And we've all heard that. It's a lot of what they talk about on the, what do they call that? The town halls.
Yep, town halls.
I'm summarizing that. They also had a panel of CFOs within industry. So for example, the CFO of Discover Financial Services was in that room and heard all about Audit Miner, which is really cool. But we got to hear a panel talk about CFOs in industry and what they're seeing and what their problems are so that we can understand how we can help them. And then there was also a panel of firms, like public accounting firms. So one of them was Whitfleet, and they had small, medium, large. And they talked about how they adopt technology and who their best technology partner, not who, but like what those really good relationships look like with their technology partners. And what we need to know as vendors about their internal process and and how we can help them adopt technology and just the patience that we need to have. That was really, really cool too. And we also talked a lot about ESG and how that is an up and coming sector of what we think will be accounting, and what softwares are out there right now and what opportunities are out there that we need to be solving for in forward thinking. And it was basically 2 days, and there was networking at night, of course, and then like the program during the day. And it was the best 2 days of like my time as a CEO, because I got to talk to the right people at these large companies that we could potentially integrate into. And if I'm being honest, like maybe they would buy Audit Miner one day and I could have that really big exit.
That's awesome.
And
So,
to get to that C-suite executive is so hard to do as a startup. So hard. And I was just in the room with them.
so talk to us a little bit about what those opportunities are that folks are solving for, Audit Miner included.
Most of it is just, it's funny because I think a lot of times software companies say, this could be really cool, let's do this, but it's not truly solving a problem. Like, let's do these analytics for audit, but you still have to do all of the normal audit procedures, and then you add the analytics on there to give you more view, but it's not reducing any time. It's not solving the problem. And so I think that a lot of software companies are starting to realize that bells and whistles don't matter anymore. We need the core technology to be replacing time. And that's kind of where the focus is shifting for a lot. And that's that's what Audit Miner is doing. We're not worried about the bells and the whistles and the really cool analytics that can be done. Like, we can audit entire populations, but that's not what the industry is doing right now. We're still doing sample selections and we're auditing samples. So until the profession moves towards auditing full populations and we have a framework around that and ability to do that without opening a can of worms, we need to be solving for problems today, which is capacity and time. And so what tools can we put it out there that literally eliminate human time? And I don't think that CPAs are scared of their jobs being replaced. I think CPAs are like, where is the technology? I have too much work to do.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I did not come on the audit side. I've never done any audit work, but I know that there is intense frustration, right, on the whether it's the accounting, the or especially the tax side of there's an increasing number of things that are being put out there that just kind of look good, built around say the tax return software, but the tax return software itself is still clunky. It's still outdated.
Yeah.
It still doesn't talk to any other
Yeah.
software. There's no API access in or out either way. There are a couple products
That's
that
the
are
worst.
kind of moving in the right direction, but it's just such a painfully slow, rate of progress. I think part of that is just the compliance, factor, but still there are aspects of that where it just seems like, why can't we have figured this out by now, right? And so as somebody coming from the tax side, we got great new products coming out on the bookkeeping and even the payroll side, that are helping a lot of those things. But there's still even aspects of that.
But a lot of that's new. Yeah, but I think it's easier to build for those because those are more of the new area. Like CAS is relatively new. And I don't know if I can say CAS because there's like, what does CAS mean? But, advisory service, I think is a new industry for CPAs. And so it's easier to build in it. It is harder to build and replace that legacy software that is so ingrained in these traditional firms. And it's so hard for them to move. And that's why I don't think we see as much innovation in that space, because the transition is so difficult.
Let me ask a question this way then, because you touched a nerve there. So 75% of CPAs are retirement age or older, right?
Right.
So those folks are going to get replaced by the pipeline, which is thin or non-existent, right? So what
Yep.
is that inflection point where that pipeline replacement is going to force the ingrained technology? I don't know, what do you want to call it? Technology process or technology?
Innovation,
Yeah,
adoption.
right. Like what's that inflection point look like?
Honestly, I think it's more a lot of these people that are retiring are not going to have a home for their book of business. They're just going to have to walk away. And there is an opportunity for the generation that's coming up to start their own practice and design it the way that they want. And I think we are going to see so many more firm owners, small firm owners than we ever had in the past, because they're not willing to take over these firms that have these legacy archaic systems. And those are the same people that we need to start innovating. We need them to start relooking at, how does audit software work? How does tax software work? Because the firms, the companies that currently have it are also legacy. Like, they're too big to pivot.
Okay, different question, same flavor. Tax software. You can't even really replace legacy tax software with something that's newer and better and that doesn't exist, right? So we're almost talking about things that don't exist. So when does that pipeline replacement drive that demand and say we absolutely positively need a tax software that's got an API, or like I'm speaking out of turn with audit software, but those sorts of things.
I'm afraid that non-CPAs are going to be able to start picking up all this work because there aren't enough CPAs to cover it. And so the market is not going to have another choice. And so I think in order to create tax software, you have to know taxes. Like, we need more innovators in our industry. It takes a CPA to create a CPA product for the most part. And so we need those people that are brave and bold to get out there and start developing it. Because if we don't, the market's going to shift elsewhere, and it's just going to water the CPA designation.
And this is
That's what I
well,
foresee
and this is
happening.
another credit to your approach, right? Was you didn't go out and try to build software that will do your audit for you, right? Like tax software, I need it to
Right.
do the tax return for me, right? Like I need it to file the federal and all the state returns. I need it to come back with critical diagnostics. I need it to be able to, take in the documents, do the prep work, do the e-filing, collect a signature, right? Like I want it to do all these different things. Otherwise, it's not as useful to me as what is already available. Whereas you were in a field where you could say, like, this one part of the process sucks, right? So, like, how can I improve on this one part? But I think we have to, you built what I think, product design people are calling the minimum viable product, right? Like, what the way you describe it, like, what is the one part of this that just really bugs everybody that I can fix? And I don't think we take a similar approach, especially on the tax side of things, right? Like we're not looking at, we're just saying that the tax software we have is terrible, so let's just pick the least terrible one and run with it, right? Like we're not looking at like what is the one piece of this puzzle that 45 of us, or in probably in the tax side you need 4,500, right? But like, what is the one part that like 4,500 CPAs could get together and say, if we could just find a solution to this part of it, right? So like, again,
Yeah.
we need somebody to spend 9 months just and interviewing the crap out of a bunch of us and just say, like, here's the word cloud, right? Like, here's the one word that keeps coming up over and over again.
Yeah. And you start small, but you build on it. So Audit Miner, while we're selling right now our prototype, in February, we're going to have a big release. It's going to look different. And there's going to be a lot more robustness to it. And it's going to save a lot more time because we've been able to fund that with customer revenue. We're bootstrapped. We haven't taken on a big investment at all. But you can start small and expand it and have that vision. You don't have to start big. We just need somebody to start.
So on that note, what is the vision, right, for Audit Miner? Is this going to be something that is going to revolutionize the audit industry? Is it going to be something that's going to be a one-stop shop, sort of product for audit? Like what is your goal? And what's your goal for the product, and what's your personal goal? Like, do you want to be the queen of audit,
So my goal,
right? Like, is that the goal here?
No, it's not. No, it's not. I want to be the queen of my own life and have financial freedom. So where I would like to see Audit Miner go is truly continuous auditing. so that as transactions are happening, it's auditing them based on, AI and machine learning. Um, and it can alert the CPA to errors before they become pervasive or potential errors. And then that way, at the end of the year, all the transactions have already been subject to audit procedures. You just have to audit the balances at year end. And so I don't think that the world is ready for that yet. Who has time to audit multiple clients throughout the year? It doesn't exist. And so, you gotta club before you can run, which is where we're at. But that's the future that I see audit miner doing. And even, kind of using blockchain technology in the retirement plan space. And there's a lot of this that we can do for payroll, and we could do it for cash, and we could do it for single audits and for HUD audits. And like, there's an array that we can expand it to, but this is where we're starting. Now, my personal goal is to sell Audit Miner. So I don't know if that full vision will be realized with me as the CEO and visionary. I do want to have an exit. I want to make a lot of money. I want to make $50 million. Why not? And then maybe write a book and spend some time with my family, and then maybe do it all over again for another problem that I see in this industry, because it's so much fun. But I do like building. I don't think I'm the type of person that can run this for 20 years and be content.
Okay, so a couple of questions here, and I'll start with this one, right? So you must have been in a position, since you were running a firm, you were in a position to start this as a side gig, to where you were starting to build this software. I think a lot, based on my read of the landscape, I think a lot of CPA firm owners, whether they're in audit or tax or CAS or whatever their specialty is, but especially on the tax side, since that's where I tend to hang out mostly, don't feel like there's any way that could happen, right? They just feel too busy. They feel too stressed out.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm going to stop right there.
Please do. Please tell me, please tell me that there's hope for these firm owners who think that there's just no way out.
Yeah. So I mentioned that I incorporated Audit Miner October of 2019. 6 months later, the pandemic was just starting, right? I have 3 kids. They're 7, 4, and 2. So daycare is closed. We are doing remote learning. I have my CPA practice that has clients. I also have Audit Miner, where I'm spending half of my time. April 1st of 2020, I'm diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. And so I go through 2020 navigating cancer treatment, raising 3 children, having 2 companies. Like, I would say that I got a lot accomplished, and you just have to find the time. It's where do you want to prioritize your time? And it's okay to sacrifice a little bit of income. Like, don't accept the new clients this year. Just work on the ones that you have a solid income to where you can live the lifestyle that you want. And then that extra time is where you explore. You don't need to grow. Like, my CPA practice is very small. We're going to issue 30 reports out of it this year. It's nothing huge, but it's enough to where I can be financially stable and also run Audit Miner without having any income from it. I mean, I do have income out of Audit Miner now. I'm very happy to say that I can pay myself. It's probably a little bit below market, but at least I don't have to sell my house. But like, there's time. You just have to have the motivation and the drive. Like, the time, no. Don't even get me started on not enough time. That's, you made that bed. And you can
having to juggle all that, so was there a feedback effect onto your firm? Did starting a second business and having to run that, even without the family and the personal side of that, did you have anything that you've taken away from starting this other business that's helped you improve the way you run your own accounting firm?
Oh yeah, my accounting firm gets to use Audit Miner for free, so we're really efficient in those audits. It's also a sandbox for Audit Miner. Like, we get to test stuff in my CPA firm. Like, it's tough when you need confidential client data. Well, I have that. I'm using it in my audit. And so we can use them as like a sandbox in like a very safe environment to test out the code and everything. And then, I want to retain 1 foot in my CPA practice. So I'm going to be gradually selling it. I have someone that's going to start as partner January 1, and she'll take over ownership slowly, kind of through sweat equity. but I want one foot in that business because it makes me stay in tune to the problems in the industry, new standards that are coming out, um, and just like networking with other professionals in the 401k space. And so I do get a lot of benefit from having both companies. But I do have both companies. Like I'm a busy person, but I rarely work over 40 hours a week.
And so, that's from the perspective of somebody who's already in the position of owning a firm. Let's take a step back and think about somebody
Mhm.
new to the field, right? And so, the typical choice that a soon-to-be accounting graduate or CPA candidate is going to have to make is between audit and tax, right? So let's say someone is trying to make that choice, right? A soon-to-be CPA is trying to make that choice. What, based on your experience so far, would push that candidate toward wanting to choose audit? What should they be thinking about? What questions should they be asking? If they want to go into audit, and really the second question, I think this is a question that we as an entire industry and field are going to have to think about is accounting the right major for somebody wanting to come into audit and do what you're doing?
I mean, I think that my audit background was unprecedented to help me start this company properly. I'm very big on processes, scalability. I've seen all the different aspects of a company. I know how to present at board meetings. I know how to form documents. I know marketing and sales and how they all fit together. So you have this as a CPA, and I think it could be audit or tax. I don't think it matters, but you have this holistic view of which companies run well and how they're ran. And I believe it gives you a leg up as far as a founder goes. I don't think CPAs give themselves enough credit of how ready they are to start a company. And as far as audit versus tax, I just think naturally you're going to gravitate one towards the other. You just have to listen to what brings you more joy. Like maybe audit or tax doesn't bring you any joy, but which one do you more likely like to do? Like when I was doing homework, I hated tax homework in college, but I didn't mind audit homework as much. And so I just naturally gravitated towards audit. You just have to listen to your gut there. But either way, you are going to get a skill set that is invaluable, whether or not you stay in public accounting.
So if I had to like distill down the last 50 minutes or so ish, um, if you want to go start a tech company, you can be an accountant. You can start as an accountant, right? If you, yeah, but and so the folks who are out there running firms who see holes in the market and who are overworked and don't have time and stuff like that, it, I mean, to me, you've totally dispelled that, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is, I don't have enough time, or I don't have an idea for a product, or I don't have a tech background. Okay, so you didn't have a tech background. Nope.
No,
You
none.
are like, and you already said you didn't even have the idea for Audit Miner.
No, no. I just knew that there was some frustration in EVP audits. They weren't making, people didn't make money off of them. That's
Yeah.
got to be a problem, right?
So you did the research, you figured it out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then, but you had all the time in the world to do this, obviously, because running a
I
firm,
mean,
3 kids, stage 3 breast cancer, like,
COVID. I mean,
oh
yeah,
yeah,
there's
COVID. Don't forget COVID,
yeah,
right?
like throw that in there to top it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
mean, when I was diagnosed, I closed my door to new business in my CPA practice. And I said, I'm going to have enough money to make about $75,000 this year. It ended up being 95. I did really well. But I worked maybe 5 to 10 hours a week on my CPA practice because I was sick, like really, really sick. And then for Audit Miner, we were building the product. And so the developers were doing it. My co-founder was really helping me. But I was still just one foot in front of the other. Like I didn't look at everything that I needed to do. I looked at what do I need to do next? And you just keep plugging along. And it doesn't matter how long it takes you. Because if you truly are solving a problem, the problem is going to be there, whether you take 2 years or 2 months.
it's an unbelievable story. It really is, and incredibly inspirational. I mean, I guess that's going to be the
Yeah.
book, right? but but I mean, really, the
I mean,
take.
if somebody has an idea, like if they were like, hey, I see a problem in here, I will happily take 5% equity and be your advisor.
Nice. But for firm owners out there who are like, who see all these problems and are stressed out, like they're not they're not sure what the next step is. They want to change the profession, like all of those things. Like, this is how you do it.
This is how you do it. You just got to believe in yourself. And literally it's just starting. All you have to do is put one foot in front of the other, and then you have that momentum. If you never start, you'll never have momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And exploring doesn't mean that you're married to it. You're just exploring. You can stop anytime. That's one of the reasons I kept my CPA practice, because I was like, if audit minor doesn't become a thing, at least I have my CPA practice to fall back on.
That's a good point too, is, you know, all the firm owners who are out there listening to this show, they've all got that. That's your plan B. And you pretty much can always have that as long as you want, because the pipeline's not super great. Right. So you can, and you have a funding source, which is what you did.
Yep.
Well, Kelly, the story.
I never thought I would be here today. Like, this was not my plan.
On the show, right? That's what you're talking about, on the show.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is like the epitome of my career right now.
Well, Kelly, we certainly appreciate the time today. The story is absolutely incredible, and it's just a really good inspiration piece for any accountant out there. Actually, accountants and non-accountants, honestly, if you want to get out there and start something, like, this is how you do it. So appreciate the time. Jeremy, you want to wrap us up and take us out?
Absolutely. And so, again, this has been the CPA Advisory Show with our guest, Kelly Mann of Audit Minor. Kelly, thank you so much for being with us on this episode. And thanks, Chris, for bringing Kelly on and for being a great co-host as always.
Hey, it's Jeremy. Thanks for listening to the CPA Advisory Show here on YouTube. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Leave a rating and write us a review. We'll probably read your review on the air too. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, follow us on Twitter at CPA Advisory Show. And if you have an idea for a topic you'd like to hear on the show, let us know by emailing host@cpaadvisoryshow.com. Thanks again. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.